Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So today I am back to talk about In Memoriam by Alice Winn. This is a book that has been getting so much buzz, so much hype and attention over the past year, and I definitely want to echo the praise that it has been getting because this was a fantastic book to read. In Memoriam follows our two protagonists, Sydney Elwood and Henry Gaunt, who we first meet as students at an elite private school in the English countryside at the break of World War I. The two boys are best friends, incredibly close, and secretly both are in love with the other, but neither of them have the courage to actually tell the other how they feel, for fear of how the other will react. In the midst of this, Henry especially feels great pressure to sign up for the war due to his mother's German heritage, drawing comment and speculation on the loyalties of the family. And he does enlist early in the novel, despite not yet being 18, and despite his lack of military experience. His privilege as a wealthy private school educated boy leads him to quickly becoming captain. Elwood, not wanting to be away from Gaunt for so long, also enlists quite quickly, and soon these boys are confronted by the horrific reality of war and how they, still very much behaving like the young schoolboys that they are, have not been given sufficient preparation for the brutality that they are facing. All the while through the course of this book you've got this ever-evolving thread of their relationship, which truly does get tested, both strengthening and weakening, by what they experience. I've said in the past that I find war narratives to be especially tricky if there isn't a strong emphasis on character and relationships. Personally, I don't really care so much for big details on battle tactics, strategy, into scenery descriptions, overly flowery philosophizing on the meaning of war and of life. What I really want to see in a war narrative is a focus on a group of characters, really getting to know the intricacies of their personalities, how they relate to each other, and seeing how over the course of war those dynamics and those personalities shift and change. And I was really pleased to see that this is exactly what In Memoriam offers. The focus of this book is not necessarily on the battles that they are fighting out on the front, it is very much the battles that are going on in their minds. The focus is on mental health, the effects of war on their mentalities, and how these boys are very quickly turned into men overnight. It does not pull its punches on the horror of what they witness and how it very materially affects them and how they interact with each other. They begin this book as lively, confident, and very naive, treating being at the front like another one of their school games. And for some characters in this book, that attitude is hard to shake, but significantly, none of them end this way, if they make it to the end of the book at all. And it's truly agonising to watch as one by one each of the characters that we meet in this book lose a little spark of themselves. Despite the sympathy that we feel for these characters, I'm not under any illusion that they are perfect characters. As much as we want them to do well, as much as we want to see them out the other side of this war, sometimes they are just a bit awful. Sometimes they are just silly little privileged boys who don't know what they're doing and who don't consider how their thoughts and their actions can affect other people and how easy it is to hurt other people around them. And I think what Alice Winn is so skilled at doing is crafting these characters that you can understand very quickly, that you can get a sense of them as if they are real people, learn to love or hate them within just a few pages, and then make you gasp as a couple of paragraphs later they die. It's stark and it's jarring, and intentionally so, very much reflecting the reality that these are young men and boys whose lives are just being snuffed out in an instant, and it's random and unpredictable. An aspect of how war really affects their mentality is how the characters, and as a result the narrative, treats the unrelenting feature of injury and death. This book does not shy away especially from the very brutal things that can happen to a person's body as a result of war. So if you're not comfortable reading like very vivid descriptions of gore, then I would definitely steer clear of this. I'm not someone who does get particularly shocked by that, but there were some moments where I was feeling a little bit queasy. Almost as shocking as these vivid descriptions of gore and of injury detail is the way that these characters end up reacting to said gore. The longer they're at the front, the more blasé they become about this. They become numb and attached to it as a coping strategy, because those around them who do dwell on it and do kind of very viscerally recognise the horror of what they are seeing seem, at least outwardly, to be suffering much worse than those who don't react at all. We get to see two kinds of shell shock within this book, one that manifests in very outward projections of terror and fear, screaming, crying, very outward indicators of a mental break, and then those who suffer it internally, who act unemotional and cold and detached, almost becoming uncaring about the people around them, becoming bitter to those who aren't at the front and not experiencing what they are experiencing, and becoming uncaring to those around them at the front, because to care almost certainly means to lose eventually. The way that these characters grow to have this level of detachment towards the horror that they're seeing is something that, honestly, it's a weird comparison, but the comparison that I made in my mind was when I was reading Adam Kay's This Is Going to Hurt, when he talks about being on the obs and gynae wards where either horrible or Sometimes even funny things can happen which seem outlandish to us but are just another day at work for him. And it's very much the same in this book. When you're witness to it so many times, what else can you do but become detached, unemotional, and find it procedural or inevitable? These characters going as far as to make bets on how long a new officer will last in the trenches. 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe even make it through the end of the war. This mentality to keep calm and carry on, stiff upper lip, is emphasised even more in the letters that Gaunter now would have to write to people's families after officers die, sending these very sanitised, censored letters to the families of the fallen, changing the circumstances of their deaths to make them sound more heroic, and thus make sure that the war still seems justified in the public's mind. They can't even have an outlet for their grief within a truthful letter to the fallen families. Death just becomes an inevitability. Death and life-changing injury is ever constant around them, and because it feels unpredictable and because the description is so strong, you feel the terror. And in turn, because these characters are so well drawn, and because you feel connected to them like they are real people to you, you feel the dread, you feel the suspense. To be honest, it took me a little while to read the first 150 pages of this book, but once we got to part 2 especially, and there is a little bit of a twist as we come into part 2, the book just became compulsive. I had to know what happened next. I had to know what was going to happen to these characters. I think it's incredible, especially for a debut novel, how skilled Alice Winn is at knowing how long to hold you in one character's POV before switching at a crucial moment that will make you want to keep reading because you have to find out what happened in the original person's POV, but then making the next person's POV so compelling that you also have to find out what happens to them. You have to know what happens to the fate of everybody. Once I got to part 2, it was a very fast read to the end, and I felt just kind of emotionally drained by the end of it, but that is no bad thing. And so yeah, in conclusion, this was a fantastic book. It gave me a little bit of hope for World War I retellings. I've read quite a few of the famous retellings of World War I, and not all of them have sat very well with me. Either I've just found them a little bit dull, a little bit glorifying, not focused on characters enough. This definitely delivered for me. Let me know if you've read In Memoriam by Alice Winn. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Alternatively, let me know what other World War I fiction I should check out. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.